My mother broke into my apartment while I was working overnight at the zoo. I had hidden cameras recording everything. Hi everyone. Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Channel's been a bit quiet lately, and your support keeps it all going. Let's jump in. Initial post. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but I need to get this off my chest before I completely lose my mind. I'm a 30-year-old zookeeper at the city's main zoological park, and I've been living in the same apartment for the past 5 years. It's nothing fancy, just a modest one-bedroom place, but it's perfectly located, only a 10-minute walk from the zoo's employee entrance. After spending 12-hour shifts caring for everything from temperamental primates to massive elephants, that short commute is a godsend. My mother is 54 and runs a small yoga studio in the suburbs. She's always been the type who believes she knows what's best for everyone, especially her children. Growing up, she had this way of making you feel like the worst person in the world if you didn't immediately comply with her wishes. I thought I'd escaped that when I moved out 8 years ago, but apparently, some patterns never change. My younger sister is 28 and works as a retail manager at a department store downtown. She currently lives with our mother in the suburbs, which means she has about an hour-long commute each way. Recently, she's been complaining about the drive, the gas prices, the wear on her car, all valid concerns, I suppose. But instead of looking for her own place like a normal adult, she's enlisted our mother in a campaign to guilt me into giving up my apartment. It started about 3 months ago with subtle hints. My mother would call after I'd finished a particularly grueling shift. You know, the kind where you've been knee-deep in rhino enclosure maintenance or dealing with a sick tiger, and she'd casually mention how tired my sister looked. She's just exhausting herself with that commute, she'd sigh. It's really taking a toll on her health. Then the comments escalated. You know, your sister works with the public all day. She needs to look presentable, not exhausted from driving. You work with animals, they don't care if you're a bit tired. As if my job doesn't require intense focus and physical stamina. As if one wrong move with a stressed elephant couldn't result in serious injury or death. Last week, things reached a new level. I just finished a 16-hour emergency shift. One of our pregnant giraffes had complications during labor, and I'd been part of the team monitoring her throughout the night. I was dead on my feet when my mother showed up at my door at 7 in the morning, my sister in tow. We need to talk about the apartment situation, my mother announced, pushing past me into my living room. My sister followed, already eyeing the place like she was mentally arranging her furniture. What apartment situation? I asked, though I knew exactly where this was heading. Don't be selfish, my mother said, settling onto my couch as if she owned the place. Your sister desperately needs this apartment. Her commute is killing her. You're young and strong. You could easily find another place farther out. Plus, you make decent money at the zoo. I wanted to laugh. Decent money? I make enough to live comfortably, sure, but zookeeping isn't exactly a path to riches. Most of us do it because we're passionate about conservation and animal welfare, not because of the paycheck. Meanwhile, my sister, as a retail manager, actually makes more than I do, something my mother conveniently ignores. This apartment is rent-controlled, I pointed out. I pay $800 a month for a place that would normally cost $1,500. If I moved, I'd be paying nearly double for something probably farther from work. You could bike, my sister chimed in. Or take the bus. You're always going on about being environmentally conscious anyway. The irony of her suggesting I take public transportation while she refused to do the same wasn't lost on me. But I was too exhausted to argue properly. I told them I needed to sleep and practically pushed them out the door. Since then, the guilt trips have been relentless. Daily calls from my mother about how I'm destroying family bonds and being inconsiderate. Text messages from my sister with links to apartments in sketchy neighborhoods 40 minutes from the zoo. Even posts on social media about the importance of family sacrifice that are clearly directed at me. The worst part? My mother has started showing up at the zoo. She'll appear during my lunch break, standing by the employee area with that disappointed look she's perfected over the years. My co-workers have started noticing, and it's embarrassing. Yesterday, she brought my sister along, and they stood there watching me clean the penguin habitat, shaking their heads as if I was committing some grave sin by keeping my own apartment. I'm exhausted. Not just from my job, which I love despite its challenges, but from this constant emotional warfare. After spending my days ensuring the welfare of creatures who depend on me, making sure the lions are healthy, the chimps are stimulated, the reptiles have proper heating, I come home to messages about what a terrible son and brother I am. My mother keeps saying my sister desperately needs this apartment, but from what I can see, what she desperately needs is to grow up and find her own place. She's been living rent-free with our mother for 3 years since she broke up with her ex. She has the money for her own apartment. I've seen her designer handbag collection and her frequent vacation posts. But why spend that when you can guilt your brother into giving up his home? I feel like I'm going crazy. Am I being unreasonable? After working with potentially dangerous animals all day, is it too much to ask for peace in my own home? The location of my apartment isn't just about convenience, it's about safety. When we have emergency calls, which happen more often than you'd think, I need to be able to get there quickly. Last month, we had an escape situation with one of the smaller primates, and I was there in 8 minutes. If I lived where my mother wants me to move, it would have taken 40 minutes minimum. I don't know what to do anymore. The stress is affecting my work. Yesterday, I nearly made a mistake with medication dosages for one of the bears because I was so distracted by another guilt trip text from my mother. My supervisor noticed I seemed off and asked if everything was okay. How do you explain that your mother is trying to force you out of your apartment without sounding like you're dealing with some ridiculous family drama? I love my family, I really do. But I'm starting to resent them. Is that wrong? I've worked hard to get where I am. I spent years volunteering, getting my degree in zoology, working unpaid internships, and finally landing this position. My apartment is part of what makes this life sustainable. But according to my mother, I should sacrifice all of that because my sister doesn't want to apartment hunt like every other adult in this city. I'm at my wits' end here. Part of me wants to just go completely no contact, but then the guilt kicks in. They're family, after all. But when does family obligation end and self-preservation begin? Update 1. The cameras. It's been 2 weeks since my original post, and things have escalated in ways I never imagined. After reading everyone's comments and advice, I realized I needed to take protective measures. Several of you mentioned that my mother might have made copies of my keys over the years, and that thought kept me up at night. So, I did 2 things. I changed my locks and installed hidden cameras in my apartment. The locksmith came while I was off work last Tuesday. I also had him install a deadbolt that can only be locked and unlocked from the inside when I'm home. The cameras were trickier. I wanted them to be completely invisible. I ended up getting tiny ones that look like smoke detectors and USB chargers. They record to a cloud server and send alerts to my phone when they detect movement. I didn't tell anyone about these changes. Not my friends, not my coworkers, and definitely not my family. I figured if nothing happened, great. I'd just have some extra security. But part of me, the part that's known my mother for 30 years, suspected something was coming. I was right. This past Thursday, I was scheduled for an overnight shift at the zoo. We were monitoring a sick tapir, and someone needed to check on her every 2 hours throughout the night. It's not unusual. Overnight shifts are part of the job when you work with animals. I'd mentioned it off-handedly to my mother earlier in the week when she called to guilt-trip me again about the apartment. "You work such terrible hours," she'd said. "Another reason why your sister needs the apartment more. Her schedule is much more reasonable." At around 11 p.m., while I was sitting in the veterinary office at the zoo preparing medications, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from my apartment cameras. My blood went cold. I opened the app, and there they were, my mother and sister, clear as day, standing in my living room. My hands were shaking as I watched the live feed. They weren't even trying to be subtle. The lights were on, and they were walking around like they owned the place. My mother was on her phone, and I could see her mouth moving rapidly. She was clearly talking to someone. My sister had a measuring tape out and was measuring the walls, the windows, even the kitchen counters. But then it got worse. So much worse. The camera's audio isn't perfect, but it's good enough. I turned up the volume on my phone and listened to their conversation. My mother was apparently on the phone with a locksmith. "Yes, we need someone first thing in the morning," she was saying. "My son is away, and we need to change the locks. He's been having some mental health issues and we're concerned about his stability. Yes, we're his family. I'm his mother. No, we don't need to wait for him. This is for his own good." My sister was nodding along, and then she said something that made my stomach drop. "Make sure to tell the super that he had a breakdown. That way, when he tries to get back in, they'll think he's having an episode." They stayed for another hour, going through my closets, my drawers, even my refrigerator. My mother took photos of everything with her phone. At one point, she picked up a photo of me with my coworkers at the zoo's anniversary gala and shook her head. "Such a waste," she said. "He could have been so much more than someone who shovels animal droppings." My sister laughed. "Well, at least this apartment won't be wasted on him anymore. I've already told my friends I'm moving in next week. Do you think he'll actually try to fight it?" "He won't have a choice," my mother replied. "Once we change the locks and I tell everyone he's having mental problems, who's going to believe him? I'm his mother. I know what's best for him. They finally left around 12:30 a.m. I sat in the zoo's break room, staring at my phone, feeling like I was in some surreal nightmare. My own mother and sister had broken into my apartment and were planning to illegally evict me by claiming I was mentally unstable. I couldn't focus on work after that. My supervisor noticed and asked if I was okay. I told him I was dealing with a family emergency, which wasn't exactly a lie. He let me take a break, and I used that time to do several things. First, I backed up all the camera footage to multiple locations, my personal cloud, a USB drive, and I even emailed copies to myself. Second, I called a lawyer friend from college and left him a voicemail explaining the situation. Third, I texted my building superintendent to confirm that no one, under any circumstances, was authorized to change my locks without my written permission. The next morning, after my shift ended, I rushed home, half expecting to find myself locked out. But my key still worked. Apparently, they were planning to do it later that day. I found a business card slipped under my door from a locksmith, with a note saying they'd be back at 2 p.m., as requested by the tenant's mother for emergency lock change. I called the locksmith company immediately and explained that this was attempted fraud, that I was the legal tenant, and that no lock change had been authorized. The receptionist was horrified and assured me they would cancel the appointment and make a note in their system. Then I sat down and watched the full footage again, this time taking notes of everything they said and did. The more I watched, the angrier I became. This wasn't just about wanting my apartment. This was about control. My mother genuinely believed she had the right to orchestrate my life, to take what was mine and give it to my sister because she deemed it appropriate. My lawyer friend called me back that afternoon. After hearing the full story and reviewing some of the footage, his response was immediate. This is breaking and entering, conspiracy to commit fraud, and potentially attempted theft. You need to file a police report. Today. But I hesitated. Despite everything, the thought of getting my mother and sister arrested felt extreme. So instead, I did something else. I called them both and asked them to meet me for dinner the next day to discuss the apartment situation. They both agreed eagerly, probably thinking I was going to cave. I'm writing this update now, the night before that dinner. I've prepared transcripts of their conversation from the video. I've printed screenshots showing them in my apartment without permission. I have everything ready to show them that I know exactly what they did and what they were planning. Part of me hopes that confronting them with evidence will be enough to make them back off. But another part of me, the part that's been dealing with this manipulation for 30 years, knows this probably won't end well. My mother doesn't handle being challenged well, especially when she's caught doing something wrong. She tends to double down, to escalate, to rally family members and friends to her side with twisted versions of events. I've also taken additional precautions. I've informed my supervisor at the zoo about the situation in broad strokes, that family members are trying to force me out of my apartment and it might affect my availability if legal issues arise. He was surprisingly supportive and told me to take whatever time I needed to sort it out. Tomorrow's dinner will determine how this all plays out. Will they apologize and back off when confronted with evidence? Will they try to gaslight me into thinking I misunderstood what I saw and heard? Or will they escalate even further? I guess I'll find out soon enough. Update 2. The dinner. The dinner was a disaster, but exactly the kind of disaster I should have expected. I arrived at the restaurant early, choosing a table in a corner where we'd have some privacy but still be in public. I had my phone recording audio in my pocket and all the evidence saved to show them. When they walked in, both were practically glowing with anticipation. My sister was already talking about paint colors before she even sat down. "I'm so glad you've come to your senses," my mother began, not even looking at the menu. "Family should always come first. Your sister has already started packing, and we can have you moved out by this weekend." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "we need to discuss what happened Thursday night." The change in their expressions was instant. My mother's face went from smug satisfaction to confusion, then to careful neutrality. My sister just looked panicked. "I don't know what you mean," my mother said slowly. I pulled up the video on my phone and turned it toward them. It was the clip of them in my apartment, clear as day, with my mother on the phone with the locksmith. I let it play for about 30 seconds before stopping it. The silence was deafening. Other diners were chatting around us, but at our table, you could have heard a pin drop. My sister's face had gone pale, while my mother's had turned an alarming shade of red. "You put cameras in your apartment?" my mother finally hissed. "You filmed us without our consent?" "You broke into my apartment," I countered. "You were planning to illegally evict me by changing my locks and telling people I was mentally unstable." "We have a key," my mother snapped. "That's not breaking in. I'm your mother. I have every right to check on your well-being." Having a key doesn't give you the right to enter without permission, I said. And you definitely don't have the right to conspire to change my locks and take over my lease. My sister finally spoke up, her voice shaky. You can't prove we were actually going to do anything. We were just looking around. I pulled up the audio clip of them discussing the locksmith and their plan to claim I was having a breakdown. My sister's face went even paler, if that was possible. This is a legal recording, my mother said, her voice rising. You can't use this against us. Actually, it's my apartment, and I can record whatever I want in my own home, I replied. And I've already consulted a lawyer. What you did constitutes breaking and entering, conspiracy to commit fraud, and attempted theft. That's when my mother lost it. Really lost it. She stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor, drawing attention from nearby tables. How dare you, she shouted. After everything I've done for you. I gave birth to you. I raised you. And this is how you repay me. By treating me like some common criminal. You literally broke into my apartment to steal it from me, I said, trying to stay calm. It's not stealing when it's family, she screamed. Your sister needs that apartment. She needs it. You're just being selfish, holding on to it when you could live anywhere. The manager was approaching our table now, and other diners were openly staring. My sister was tugging on my mother's arm, trying to get her to sit down, but she shook her off. You're going to give your sister that apartment, she said, her voice low and threatening now. Or I will make your life hell. I'll tell everyone at the zoo what kind of son you really are. I'll show up every day. I'll tell them you're unstable, that you need help. Who do you think they'll believe, a concerned mother or someone who secretly records his own family? That's when I realized there was no reasoning with her. This wasn't about the apartment anymore, if it ever really was. This was about control, about her inability to accept that I was an adult who could make his own decisions. If you come to my workplace again, I'll file a restraining order, I said quietly. If you try to contact my employer, I'll press charges for harassment. And if you or sister come near my apartment again, I'll file the police report my lawyer has already helped me prepare. My mother laughed, but it was an ugly sound. You wouldn't dare. I'm your mother. And that's why I'm giving you this chance to walk away, I said. Leave me alone. Leave my apartment alone. Leave my job alone. Or I'll have no choice but to involve the police. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, knocking into a waiter on her way. My sister hesitated, looking between me and the door. You know this is wrong, I said to her. You know what you were doing was illegal. She bit her lip, then said quietly, she said you wouldn't actually need to move out. She said we'd just share it for a while until you found somewhere else. She made it sound like you'd agreed but were just being difficult about the timing. I stared at her. And you believed that? While measuring my apartment and talking about telling people I was having a mental breakdown. She had the grace to look ashamed. She's very convincing. You know how she is. I do, I said. The question is, are you going to keep going along with it? She didn't answer, just grabbed her things and left. That was 3 days ago. Since then, I've received approximately 50 text messages from various family members, all saying versions of the same thing. How could you threaten your mother with police? How could you choose an apartment over family? Don't you know she just wants what's best for everyone? I've also received several voicemails from my mother, ranging from tearful apologies, while still insisting I'm overreacting, to threats about ruining my reputation. My sister has been silent. Yesterday, however, things escalated again. I got a call from my building's superintendent. My mother had shown up at his office with printed emails, forged emails, supposedly from me, saying I was planning to sublet the apartment to my sister and asking him to prepare the paperwork. Fortunately, the super called me to confirm before doing anything. I sent him the real evidence of the break-in and explained the situation. He was appalled and has now banned both my mother and sister from the building, putting their photos at the security desk with instructions that they're not to be admitted under any circumstances. But I know this isn't over. My mother doesn't give up when she believes she's right, and in her mind, she's always right. The fact that I've stood up to her, that I've threatened legal consequences, has probably only made her more determined. I've started the process of getting a restraining order. My lawyer friend is helping me file the paperwork. I've also informed HR at the zoo about the situation in more detail, providing them with copies of the threatening messages in case my mother follows through on her threat to contact them. It's exhausting. I go to work and try to focus on the animals, but I'm constantly checking my phone, worried about what she might do next. My coworkers have noticed I'm on edge. Yesterday, while I was feeding the gibbons, One of them, a particularly perceptive female named Luna, kept touching my hand through the enclosure fence, like she could sense my distress. I love my job. I love my apartment. I've built a good life for myself, and I'm not going to let my mother's manipulation take that away from me. But the stress is wearing me down. I'm double-checking my locks obsessively. I jump every time I get a notification on my phone. I've started parking in different spots at work in case she's watching my routine. This shouldn't be my life. I shouldn't have to protect myself from my own mother. But here we are. I'm going to the police station tomorrow to file the report. I've put it off long enough, hoping things would calm down, but the forged emails were the last straw. My mother has shown she's willing to commit fraud to get what she wants. My sister might have been a somewhat unwilling accomplice, but she was still an accomplice. I'll update again once I've filed the report and know what the next steps are. For now, I'm just trying to take it one day at a time, focusing on my work and remembering why I love what I do. The animals don't judge. They don't manipulate. They just need care and respect, which I'm happy to provide. It's more than I can say for some humans in my life. Final update. 2 months later. I'm writing this final update from my apartment. Yes, my apartment, where I'm still living peacefully and securely. It's been 2 months since I filed a police report, and the dominoes have fallen in ways I never could have predicted. After the forged email incident, I went to the police with everything. The video evidence, the recorded conversations, the text messages, the forged documents, and a detailed timeline of events. The detective assigned to my case was a middle-aged woman who took one look at the evidence and said, "This is one of the clearest cases of attempted fraud and conspiracy I've seen in a while." The police moved faster than I expected. Within a week, both my mother and sister were arrested. The charges were breaking and entering, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted fraud, and harassment. My sister was released on bail the same day. My mother, however, made things worse for herself by arguing with the arresting officers and had to spend the night in jail before making bail. The arrest became public knowledge quickly. Very quickly. My mother had built her yoga studio's reputation on being a place of peace, harmony, and family values. Several of her longtime clients were apparently at the courthouse for various reasons when she was brought in, and word spread like wildfire through her suburban community. Within 2 weeks, her yoga studio was hemorrhaging clients. People don't want to take spiritual guidance and wellness advice from someone who broke into their own child's apartment. 3 of her instructors quit, citing ethical differences. By the end of the month, the building owner had terminated her lease, citing a clause about maintaining a reputation consistent with the wellness center's values. My sister's situation unfolded differently but was equally devastating for her. Her company has a strict policy about employees with pending criminal charges, especially charges involving fraud and theft. She was immediately suspended pending investigation. When the corporate office reviewed the case and saw she was on camera planning to defraud her own brother, they terminated her employment. The retail world is surprisingly small in our city, and word got around. Last I heard, she's working at a call center and living in a studio apartment an hour from downtown. But the real shock came during the legal proceedings. My mother, in her infinite wisdom, decided to represent herself initially, convinced she could explain everything away as a misunderstanding between family members. During the preliminary hearing, she actually told the judge that she had maternal rights to her adult son's property and that I was being mentally manipulated into keeping the apartment for my sister. The judge's response was measured but devastating. "Ma'am, your son is a 30-year-old professional with no history of mental illness. You, on the other hand, are on camera committing multiple crimes. I strongly suggest you obtain proper legal representation." She finally hired a lawyer, but the damage was done. The prosecutor had everything they needed, and then some. My mother's own words in court had essentially confirmed her guilt and her twisted reasoning. 3 weeks ago, they both took plea deals. My mother got 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and a restraining order keeping her at least 500 feet away from me, my apartment, and my workplace. She also had to pay restitution for the locksmith call-out and my legal fees. My sister got 1 year probation and 100 hours of community service, with her own restraining order. The impact on the family has been seismic. My extended family is split. Some relatives still think I should have handled it within the family, and that getting law enforcement involved was too extreme. Others, particularly my aunt, my mother's sister, have reached out to say they're proud of me for standing up to her, sharing their own stories of her manipulation over the years that they never had the courage to confront. My father, who divorced my mother 15 years ago and moved across the country, called me after hearing about everything. "I'm sorry you had to go through this," he said. "But I'm not surprised. It's why I left." She always had to control everything and everyone. At work, the situation actually improved my standing. My supervisor and the zoo administration were incredibly supportive throughout the ordeal. They increased security measures and made it clear that any harassment of employees would be met with immediate legal action. Last month, I was promoted to senior zookeeper, a position I'd been working toward for 2 years. My supervisor mentioned that my handling of the difficult personal situation, with professionalism and dedication to my work despite the stress, had demonstrated the kind of character they value in leadership positions. The promotion came with a raise that, ironically, means I could now afford a nicer apartment closer to the zoo if I wanted. But I'm staying put. This apartment isn't just about the convenient location or the affordable rent anymore. It's about the principle. It's my home, and I defended it. I've also started therapy to process everything that happened. My therapist has helped me understand that my mother's behavior wasn't normal parental concern, but rather a pattern of narcissistic control. Growing up, I'd normalized her manipulation, her guilt trips, her belief that she had the right to control her adult children's lives. The apartment situation was just the latest and most extreme manifestation of a lifetime of boundary violations. My sister and I haven't spoken since the plea deals were finalized. Mutual friends tell me she's bitter, claiming I ruined her life over an apartment. She apparently doesn't see, or won't acknowledge, that she made choices that led to her current situation. She chose to participate in the break-in. She chose to go along with the plan to claim I was mentally unstable. She chose to measure my apartment for her furniture while I was at work. Every consequence she's facing stems from her own actions. My mother, from what I hear through the family grapevine, is living with her sister and trying to restart her yoga business online. Her probation prevents her from contacting me directly, but she's made sure relatives know she considers herself the victim in all this. According to her narrative, she was just a concerned mother trying to help both her children, and I'm a cruel son who chose material possessions over family. But here's the thing I've learned through all of this. Choosing yourself isn't cruel. Defending your boundaries isn't selfish. And family isn't a free pass to violate someone's rights, property, and peace of mind. I'm doing well now. Really well. The stress that had been affecting my work is gone. I can focus entirely on what I love, caring for the animals and contributing to conservation efforts. Just yesterday, I successfully introduced 2 rescued sun bears to each other, a delicate process that required patience and careful observation. Watching them play together for the first time, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in months. My apartment feels like a sanctuary again. I've removed the hidden cameras. I don't need them anymore. The restraining orders and the building's security measures mean I can relax in my own home. I've even started having friends over again, something I'd stopped doing when the family drama was at its peak. Sometimes, late at night, I do feel sad about how things ended. I mourn the relationship I wish I could have had with my mother and sister, one based on mutual respect and healthy boundaries. But I've accepted that you can't have a healthy relationship with someone who doesn't see you as a separate person with your own rights and autonomy. To everyone who supported me through their comments and messages when I first posted, thank you. Your validation that I wasn't crazy, that what was happening wasn't normal or acceptable, gave me the courage to take action. You helped me see that I deserved to live peacefully in my own home without manipulation and guilt. Life is good now. It's quiet, stable, and drama-free. I wake up each morning, walk 10 minutes to a job I love, spend my day caring for incredible animals, and come home to my apartment, my sanctuary that I fought for and won. That's all I ever wanted. And now, finally, it's what I have.